Hey, hey, hey. Happy Tuesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. This is live show 1218. If you're not overly familiar with the stream, let me point out it's super casual. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news. And then usually we'll take a first look at a game, either a board game unboxing or flipping through a role-playing game release. Every once in a while, we might tackle a topic like we are tonight. And every rare month or so, we might actually just hang out and chat with chat. So tonight, I am going to give you my Gen Con 2025 recap. So it's basically what went on with my best friend Elliott Miller and my trip to Gen Con 2025. And kind of a weird, it's got to be the weirdest Gen Con I ever went to. We'll discuss. We're going to tackle the news first, though, before we get on into that. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Also, because this is a live show, there is chat available. You must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. One of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you happen to check that box and you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Semper Buffo. Kevin R. Smith is with us, as is Chris Lundgren and Stephen from Roll for Combat. Yes, Stephen's with us. Did an interview with Stephen at Gen Con 2. Stephen says that I guess I made it back in one piece, and Elliott actually exists. Stephen met him. 2 T's on Elliott's name. It's Elliott. In fact, when we used to do the podcast and Elliott and I were co-hosts, Elliott came up with a little song about how to spell his name correctly. If I remember correct, it went Elliott Miller. I'm just saying. Kevin R. Smith says they have been watching a bunch of the Gen Con interviews today. Yes, we're going to kind of go through each of the interviews and what was going on with Gen Con. So Kevin R. Smith says, unfortunately, the Roll for Combat interview is about the only one they did not see today. You're not missing anything. No, actually, it's a good interview. It's a fun interview. All right. So also want to say hello to the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D. She happens to be floating around out there tonight. She is one of our chat moderators. She who lurks in the shadows with the glittery banhammer. So watch out. All right, so let's dive on into the news. Yes, because arriving in September from Thunderworks Games is a tableau building. Well, actually, it's more deck building, I think, than tableau building. And I am talking about Fliptoons. I've got the scoop. It's time to cast the next great animated show. A top talent agent like you knows a star when you see one, and the director needs you to fill 6 roles for the big production. Search Flip Valley for the perfect toon characters and make sure they're ready to work together on the silver screen. Fliptoons is a quick deck building game. You'll begin with a deck of hopeful toon actors. Each round, flip 6 of these toons out of your deck into the screen grid to audition together. Each toon card in your 3x2 grid has different talent effects. Some are resolved as soon as they're flipped. Many will interact with one another and hopefully earn fame for your studio. But they won't all have that special on-screen chemistry you're looking for. Some won't work well together at all. After each flip, tally up your current grid of toons' fame points, then spend them to hire more stars for your cast. Purchase these new toon cards from the market and add them to your deck, or spend some of your fame to dismiss a card and get that bad actor off the stage. Sorry, kid, you just don't have what it takes to be a star in this show. If your flip is the first to generate 30 or more fame, you'll earn the Critics' Choice Award, worth extra fame points, and trigger the end of the game. After that turn's market phase, it's time for one final flip. The player who earns the most fame during the final flip is declared the winner. Yay! Fliptoons is currently available for pre-order for $19.95. It's going to land in stores in September. Whee! I will actually have a little more information about Fliptoons in a few minutes. Now, well, I shouldn't say a few minutes. Later in the show. So there you have it. I like the artwork. The artwork's got a very 1930s sort of vibe to it. Kind of the Max Fleischer Studios. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. All right, let's talk about some role-playing game news, because now available in print from Exalted Funeral is a new zine for Outcast Silver Raiders. And here's what I know about Hexen, Volume 1, the Antiquarian Anthology. This first volume, the Antiquarian's Anthology, focuses on hidden and forbidden knowledge in the world of Outcast Silver Raiders. Hexen is a zine created for OSR, as in the game Outcast Silver Raiders, but useful for any old school role-playing game. Within this first volume lurk a panoply of horrors and wonders for your campaigns. Explore the occult medieval milieu as the Antiquarian, a new class that manipulates forbidden spheres of lost esoteric knowledge. Use the new detailed system of stress, horror, and mind-bending epiphanies. I've had an epiphany. To add a touch of madness to your outcasts, wield eldritch artifacts full of the promise of power and its corruptions. Confront the celebrants of Angus Og, a heretical cult that includes 2 detailed encounters and 2 fully mapped adventuring locations. This issue includes the Antiquarian, a new class, roots in dusty pages to increase their spheres of study. New memories and keepsakes expand outcasts' backgrounds. Eldritch artifacts present new opportunities and dangers to their owners. A new system of stress can be used to deal with existential dread. A celebrant cult seeks the heretical and arcane with 2 detailed encounters and 2 fully mapped new locations. This 46-page zine with PDF carries an MSRP of $20 over at Exalted Funeral, or if you want, you can just grab the PDF for $12. I really liked Outcast Silver Raiders. I thought that was a very cool role-playing game, especially the setting book, the big volume out of the 3 books that came in the slipcase. Really excellent, really very, very well done. So I'm kind of curious how this zine might turn out. I will not be surprised if we actually have an opportunity to take a look at this Not too far out. I don't think it started shipping yet. I think it is just now available. So very cool. Speaking about other things that are now available for pre-order, is 2300 AD Invasion Part 1 Background and Appendices. And here's the lowdown from Mongoose Publishing. The French arm is the most heavily settled and best developed segment of humanity's extrasolar expansion, thanks to the efforts of the ESA member nations. In 2295, a research. Whoa, wait a second. What the heck? Not in the right order here. Boy, I tell you. In 2295, a research station studying the red giant star Arcturus made contact with an unknown star-faring species. Attempts to communicate were fruitless, and the alien flotilla departed the system after a few days. 1 year later, they returned. Invasion is a complete campaign covering the war against the alien Kafirs. The travelers are swept up in this conflict and find themselves becoming heroes. Part 1 includes descriptions of all colony worlds on the French arm, the major outposts, new spacecraft, a compilation of animals and characters, and information on 3 alien species. Also included is a large section detailing Station Archer. All of this supports a campaign that follows the travelers from humble beginnings as colonists on the Azores, caught in the first alien assault, then across worlds of the French arm. The focus is on the travelers and the worlds and the people they meet, showcasing the horror and heroism of an interstellar war for survival against a mysterious and terrible foe. Right now, you can pre-order the 216-page hardcover with PDF for $49.99. If you want, you can grab the PDF right now over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. Very nice to see that we have got some new 2300 AD releases. Although I do think that the war against these aliens was in a previous edition of 2300 AD. For some reason it rings a bell, but I don't think it was as detailed as this, because the reality is, I'm taking a guess, this is going to be at least 3 books, because this is just the background as well as the appendices. So we shall see. Robert Santon's with us, as is Mike, and Sarah D is chiming in. Howdy, howdy, everybody. All right, moving right along. Now we'll go back to our other story that I was like, what the hell happened here? What the hell? Ronin Publishing has teamed with Bundle of Holding for the Modern Age and Expanse role-playing game bundle. In fact, I think they're calling it the Expanse Modern Age Bundle. I've got the deets on the deal. Adventurer. We've resurrected for the 3rd time the December 2020 Modern Age and Expanse role-playing game bundle featuring, well, you guessed it, the Expanse role-playing game based on James S.A. Corey's mega-popular science fiction novels of diplomacy, danger, and discovery in the future solar system. This bargain-priced revival also includes Modern Age, which adapts the same rules for high-power action from the Industrial Revolution onward. Both these tabletop role-playing games use the easy and fast-playing adventure game engine, Age, from Green Ronin Publishing. You have a new chance to get everything you need for your own campaign of modern adventure. Let's try reading English tonight, Jeff. Or hard-flying science fiction. If you pay more than the current threshold price of $33.38, That was just about an hour or so ago. You'll get this Revival's entire Expanse collection with 5 more titles worth an additional $80. I think this is missing some of its sell sheet information here, because usually we get the first part of this. I think it's $9.95 or $19.95. That's getting you the Modern Age Companion. Anyway, if you pay more than $33.38, you'll level up and also get this Revival's entire Expanse collection with 5 more PDFs worth an additional $80, including the complete standalone The Expanse role-playing game core rulebook, the Expanse Game Masters kit, the scenarios Abzu's Bounty and Salvage Op, and newly added in this Revival, Ships of the Expanse, the 144-page guide to every kind of spacefaring vehicle in the solar system. These savings are going to run through August 25th. Chris Lundgren's popping on into chat. Good to see you once again. Says they never watched the show. You missed out. It's a great show. It is an excellent deal there. Although it was kind of weird when it got canceled and got picked back up, and then we didn't get to actually see the end of The Expanse. So I think there was one book left that they needed to adapt. So Chris Lundgren's asking if I got to see Wizard Tower Games. I did not. Says they know Mark was offering a free copy to Jeff, and they bumped into each other. Don't know. Knew nothing about it. Don't know how to help you out. All right. Let's talk about our final news piece, because now available in PDF is Warhammer, the Old World Role-Playing Game Master's Guide. And here's the latest from Cubicle 7 Games. Take your Warhammer campaigns to the next level with the Game Master's Guide, a 192-page full-color PDF packed with expert advice, storytelling tools, and game-enhancing mechanics for running unforgettable adventures in the grim world of Warhammer, the Old World. Designed to complement the player's guide, this essential volume gives game masters everything they need to build immersive, perilous, and character-driven campaigns in a setting where every choice could lead to glory or corruption. Learn how to run engaging sessions with guidance tailored to the unique tone, themes, and mechanics of the Old World, perfect for both new and veteran game masters. Use grim portents, NPC contacts, and dark threads to craft layered stories and keep your players invested in every twist of fate. Delve into the city of Talagad and its surrounding regions and adapt your campaigns to other iconic areas of the Old World with ease. Introduce magic items, downtime events, and the terrifying paths to corruption. Tools designed to shock, tempt, and challenge your players. Populate your world with a huge array of fully developed NPCs, complete with plot hooks, goals, and conspiracies to weave into your campaign. With the Game Master's Guide at your side, you'll have the tools to build tension, breathe life into the Old World, and guide your players through dark tales of danger, intrigue, and war. 2 tomes of grim peril, 1 legendary collection. Right now, you can grab the PDF. It is available over at DriveThruRPG. Once again, it is clocking in at 192 pages. You can snag it for $24.99. All righty. Kevin R. Smith is kind of giving a breakdown about The Expanse. And it's kind of funny because Kevin's giving a good synopsis, but that's still not all of it, right? I mean, I don't think it encompasses everything because there's a lot going on. A lot going on. Mark Hawkswell's with us tonight, asking if anybody's got a ballpark number of how many booths there were at Gen Con. There were over, if I remember correctly, over 570 exhibitors. Not every single one of them was in the exhibit hall, but that is what they are talking about as far as the number of exhibitors. I just saw a news piece come out today, and it was talking about how Gen Con set a record, which was kind of strange. I thought they cracked 80,000 for the 50th anniversary, but I guess not. Said they set a record with over 72,000 attendees. And once again, like I said, I think the number was 570 exhibitors. We're going to talk a little bit about Gen Con, not a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about Gen Con in a few minutes. And I will also touch on the whole exhibitor situation. So Chris Leonard asks, is it close to the crowd? I'm guessing it's the crowds at Comic-Con. No. Comic-Con pulls in about 120,000 attendees. Craziness. All right. So that was the news tonight. Of course, I mentioned Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, Wargame Vault, any of those One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up. Help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang, if you find this to be a valuable resource, hell, if you like the website, like the channel, maybe just dig what we do, there are a couple of ways that you can help support the Gaming Gang. First of all, you can do a one-time donation by way of PayPal. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, that's yummy. Or you can become a monthly member of our Patreon. And of course, I have links to all of that down in the show notes. Every live show, I like to give a bit of a shout out to our Patreon members. So big thank you to those at our $5 tier. We've got Gustavo Cavalho, Jason Lawman, Cabal, Kevin R. Smith, Sean O'Donnell, and Talzek. Our $10 members, Dan Webb, GameCat, Pete Stracklich, RPG Munch, Tessie Trekkie, and Tier 2 DM. And at our $25 tier, Agile Monk and the Madman. So very nice. Very cool. Thank you very much, everyone. Because without your help, I wouldn't be able to pull this off. Very, very, very true. Kevin R. Smith says, seems like Gen Con always releases an inflated attendance number and revises it downward. I will tell you one thing. That is something that Origins Game Fair does religiously. But I don't think they revise it. I think they just stick with it. Because I remember one year, Elliott and I were there. I think it was the next to last Origins I had gone to. And we were walking around, and I mean, you know, there was a good crowd there, but they were saying that it was a certain number, and it was like, absolutely not. No way. No way was that number of people there. And funny enough, a lot of people who had been there were saying the same thing. I was like, no. No. All righty. So that is the news for tonight. So we're going to be getting on into my Gen Con 2025 recap in just a few moments. But you know what? Let's take a peek at the little Patreon ad first. And then I think we're going to dive on into a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
It's time to refresh. For your convenience, we have an attractive snack stand with a parade of items to tempt your taste. Buttered popcorn, golden good and hot from the popper, sizzling hot dogs, cradled in fresh, fluffy buns, ice cream treats and other good things to eat, plus ice-cold Coca-Cola. So bright, so bracing with the taste and tingle all its own. Pause and refresh with a Coke at our snack stand. Right now.
Coppertone turns a suntan into a fun tan. Now there's a Coppertone for everybody's body. You can choose anything from Coppertone Light, our non-greasy oil or lotion, to our rich, more protective sunscreens. So choose the Coppertone you need to get the beautiful tan you want. Coppertone, for the sunny side of your life.
This is Tiger Joe. Gigantic. With walkie-talkie operator, machine gunner. Tiger Joe. Rugged. Powerful. Ready for battle. You command Tiger Joe with remote control. Stop. Back. You breech load Tiger Joe and fire. Battery powered, the biggest tank of all. Tiger Joe, sold at food markets only.
Tasty will be the first bread on the moon.
Now what?
Well, Tasty is still the best bread on Earth.
Seven young people shipwrecked on a mysterious island. The island was deserted. Not even birds or animals dared to come here. What did they find?
Hey! Hey!
Seaweed, fish, and turtle's eggs. Anything we can eat, as well as snakes and lizards.
Just let me finish. There's a lot of grass growing around here. You can eat the roots. You can eat the roots of a lot of plants here. You never thought of that, did you?
They were driven to the edge of starvation. Food was scarce, and they were forbidden to eat the mushrooms that grew on the island. Fear and hunger turned them against each other.
I'll kill you.
But Tango will help me live.
I haven't been hungry since I left the ship.
Mamie. Oh, help me. Help me.
Please. Can't we eat the mushrooms now?
That would really be the end of us.
Akiko!
Look out! Oh, look out!
Matungo, the horrible mushrooms. Matungo, the vegetable monster. Can they escape the dreaded Matungo? You'll find out when you see Matungo.
Matango. Most of us here in the United States remember that film as Attack of the Mushroom People. And if you happen to have lived in the Chicagoland area when I was a kid, so we're talking probably mid to late 70s. It seemed to be on constantly on Channel 32 on the Saturday afternoon monster movie. And it is very trippy. It is a very bizarre flick if you have not seen it. Sadly, there are really long periods of kind of nothing going on, fairly boring, but some of it's like really bizarre. And it's got kind of a, well, I shouldn't say kind of, it's got a downer of an ending, which is not something you would normally see in especially Japanese Toho films. But I don't know. Kevin R. Smith says, bizarre fits a movie about mushrooms. Yes, you are correct. All right, so I am going to be tackling the Gen Con 2025 recap. But before I do, if you had checked out my first look video at the Starfinder 2nd Edition Player's Guide, then you may recall I had a contest. And I shared the rules of the contest, how to get involved, and I promised I would give away two copies of the Starfinder 2nd Edition Player's Guide in PDF. Our winners are Eleeson, so it is Eleeschen, and David is Happy. So if you're a winner, what you need to do is you need to email Jeff McAleer at thegaminggang.com from your email address, which is associated with your YouTube account, which is going to be your Gmail. And I will get you a copy of the 2nd edition of Starfinder Player's Guide momentarily. So Angel Monk's like, congratulations to the winners. Gangbusters BX is with us, says, Wave, sorry to have missed you at Gen Con. Yes, me too, because I understand you wanted to get a copy of the game in my hands, and I am very interested to check it out. So sadly, we did not connect. All right, so let's get on into the Gen Con 2025 recap. Now, a few things I want to mention. First of all, this is how, Elliott and my trip went, right? This isn't, and then on Wednesday at 7 p.m., they had this scheduled. Well, if we weren't there, if we didn't see it, I'm not talking about it, right? So this is to kind of give you an idea of what was going on. And as Agile Monk knows, because Agile Monk had sent me some messages on our Discord server, which if you have not joined our Discord server, why not? I mean, just hanging out. We're talking about games, movies, TV shows, just having a good time. Plus, it's a great place to be notified of the news as far as tabletop gaming goes by way of thegaminggang.com and such. So anyway, so Tuesday night, I got ready. It was funny. I had everything packed. I had everything in the car. I was taking 40 items down to the auction. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try to get a few hours of sleep because I knew I had to leave at 11:30 in the evening to get over to Elliott's house because Elliott lives a little more than an hour away from me. And then we wanted to hurry up and get out on the road because we wanted to be parked and in a hotel by 6 a.m. Eastern time. So we were going to lose an hour. Joseph Brogan is with us. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. Said they're glad they ran into me at the Shadow Dark booth. They had a pretty good 17th Gen Con. I have not been to 17. I think I'm at 12. All right. So anyway, so I thought, okay, I'm going to try to get a few hours of sleep. And then, of course, didn't happen because it never happens. I got like an hour and a half of sleep. And then my phone rings. It's Elliott. So I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to warn you, I'm not feeling too hot. So I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And he, explained what was going on. So I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, we'll just see how it goes. I'm like, okay, all right. So 11:30 p.m. rolls around and I'm like, okay. So I leave and I'm going to pick up Elliott. And I've only been gone about 10 minutes and I'm in a stretch of road that is about 20-minute drive where there's some construction and it's just divided highways. So one lane going one way, another lane going the other way. And of course, I have my phone in my pocket. I get a text. And I'm like, uh-oh. Well, I'm like, what's going on? So of course, there's all these like barrels and stuff like that. So I'm not going to, I normally don't use my phone anyway while I'm driving, but I'm not going to, try to reach into my pocket, grab this, take a peek at the text because I don't want to drive into one of these damn barrels and that. So anyway, so I finally got to a point where I could pull over and it was Elliott, but he was just asking if I had left yet. And I texted back and I said, yup. And he said, okay, cool. So I'm like, all right. So got over there, picked Elliott up and got on the road. And as we were driving, Elliott said, hey, I'm starting to feel better. I'm like, cool. I said, well, maybe it was stress because the final few days of the month for Elliott's job, it's just really, really stressful. More on that in a moment. So yeah, he was like, yeah, the rest of the time we were in Indianapolis, he was fine. He felt fine. So anyway, so we get down to Indianapolis in time. We're able to park in the hotel that the auction is being held at, which I tried to do last year and it was full. So we had to park down the street and it took us like 20, 25 minutes to drag the auction stuff to the auction. So that was a good start. Sort of like, yeah, nice start right off the bat. So we're like, okay, cool. So anyway, Elliott had to work for a bit. And we were going to the Dungeons and Dragons press event that was being held at 1 p.m. So Chris Leonard's asking about the auction. Yeah, I'll get to it. I will get to it. So anyway, so we head over there and I gotta say, everybody that was there as far as the Wizards of the Coast crew were all new, all brand new. In fact, Elliott has just joined us in chat. He is voice of E. It says, it's like I was there. Oh, yeah. So anyway, Elliott's just coming on because he's like, I want to make sure Jeff doesn't, stretch the truth here. Nah, he's just hanging out. He's probably going to share some of his take as well. So anyway, I would sum things up with the Wizards of the Coast press event that I don't know. I just don't know. Of course, they talked about the various different things that are on the horizon. So we've got a starter set that's coming out. I want to say it's September. And I've mentioned this before. It's being promoted as a board game, not as a role-playing game, which sounds strange because it is a role-playing game. It is a starter set for Dungeons and Dragons. And then the artwork on the front of it is really, really, pushing on into that whole Larry Elmore artwork, the classic artwork with the barbarian from behind fighting the red dragon. It's like, oh, that's a woman. Well, it's certainly a woman on the cover of this. And then they've got another supplement. It's an adventure supplement but all the adventures are like 1 or 2 pages in length. Not sure how those are adventures. That's kind of just encounters. Now, they do have a new marketing company that they're working with. I did talk to the contact there and gonna try to see about, getting some more Wizards of the Coast stuff to take a look at. So, and I know there are people out there thinking, oh, you're selling out. No, if I share a look at something and then I review it and then I go, that's not selling out. So it's like, but I know a lot of people want to see Dungeons and Dragons reviews, and they want to see reviews from people who aren't just shills. So who knows? They might just be like, yeah, whatever. So anyway, so then, so that was over. Then we ran off to get our press badges. And then we went and we took everything up to the auction and dropped that off. And then we were supposed to go to a party both Elliott and I had RSVP'd for. So we went over. It was at a restaurant bar. And we went to the area that it was being held at. And there was a person who was like checking people off. Place was jam-packed. And we get there and the woman's like, oh, well, I don't see you here. And I'm like, I know, I RSVP'd. I got a confirmation back. So I'm looking, and I'll be the first to say my email app on my phone is dog shit. I mean, it's awful. Try searching for something. Yeah, good luck. And I mean, with all of the emails that I get, so I couldn't find it. And she was like, well, we're over capacity already, so we can't let anybody else in. So Elliott and I were like, yeah, whatever. Let's just go. We'll go leave. We'll eat. We'll grab, a few adult beverages. And then there was another party we were supposed to go to. And we went over to that. And then we found out there was like no alcohol, really no food. And it was like, nah. We're like, the hell with it. Let's just go hang out. So that's what we did. Tessie Trekkie has joined us in chat. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So Thursday rolls around. As I mentioned, Elliott's job, last day of the month, last couple of days, last few days, tend to be like really hectic, very stressful. So Elliott was hoping maybe he would get done with work maybe around 2-ish Eastern. Maybe. So I had already made sure I didn't schedule any interviews early on Thursday. I scheduled them later in the day. So Elliott's sitting there, everything's in, just needs one more report. So he can compile everything, then he's done for the day. And he's waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting. So I had gone over to the exhibit hall, and I was walking around, and I actually chatted with Jonathan G. Nelson over at Adventure a Week Games. And it was kind of weird because he had reached out about doing an interview, or maybe I had reached out about doing an interview. Then we just didn't get on the same page. So anyway, so I swung by and I talked to him, and he gave me this adventure, I guess it's a new adventure he'd been working on, as well as 2 adventures. These are horror adventures, of course, for 5e. One is Treat. The other is Trick. And then each of these has a map. Each of the adventures has a battle map. So he gave me those to take a peek at, even though we did not have an opportunity to chat and put together an interview, which the reality is it wouldn't have mattered because Elliott was still waiting for that report to come in. Chris Leinwand says, wow, Mothership won the Gold Award for Best RPG Starter Set. Didn't know that I bought it. It's awesome. Jeff did a review of the video. Yeah, I reviewed the box set for Mothership. I liked it. Land of Eam won. We'll talk a little bit about Exalted Funeral. So anyway, I popped back over to the hotel. And funny enough, you know, we stayed in a hotel that was right there by the convention center. But we still had to kind of do a long walk because we had to go around stuff. And it was still kind of a pain in the ass, right? I mean, it wasn't like, you know, if you're staying at the JW Marriott, you just walk across the street, or if you're staying at the Marriott, you walk across the street. No, because our hotel was facing the other way. We had to walk around. Anyway, kind of a pain. So 4 o'clock rolls around. Elliott still doesn't have the report. So I had an interview set up for Green Ronin Publishing at 5 p.m. Elliott was still not able to head over to the exhibit hall. So I did just a recorded interview. And I also received a copy of the Fantasy Age 2nd edition core rulebook. Because as I've said in the past, I'm curious about Fantasy Age. In fact, I'm curious about the Age system itself. I've never had an opportunity to look at any of the books. So that was something that the fine folks over at Green Ronin Press, or Publishing, I should say. Why did I say press? Was kind enough to provide me. So that was Thursday. Finally, about 6 p.m., Elliott's done for the day, and he was not happy. He was not a happy camper because basically it was the entire first day of Gen Con. He didn't really get to do anything. So we did, you know, we went out to eat and stuff like that. I did not bring any games with because we didn't have any space really in the SUV. It was pretty packed. So then on Friday, we get up, we're heading over to the convention center, and I actually ran into Andrew Bellery from Exalted Funeral. And it was kind of funny because he looks like a younger version of one of Elliott and my really good friends from high school. More on that in a few moments. So got to chat with him, and then he said, hey, they were going to do a get together. He was going to text me, and he wanted me to go. And I was like, yeah, sure. That's cool. So anyway, so we started off talking with Wolfgang Bauer over at Cobalt Press. Always enjoy talking with Wolfgang. So we chatted about Labyrinth, chatted a little bit about Tales of the Valiant, the upcoming Northlands Kickstarter that is going to be a kind of frozen north setting for Midgard, or, you know, any fantasy role-playing game that you would like. We also talked about their new board game, Necromancer. Yes, I know, this looks surprisingly quite a bit like Munchkin. But it's not, it is not Munchkin. So of course, stay tuned. More on this. And I also talked a little bit, this was not part of the interview, but I talked a little bit about Foundry with Wolfgang. And Wolfgang said, you know, reach out to another contact who I have at Cobalt Press, because I'd like to bring you guys a little more information about virtual tabletops and things like that. Maybe not necessarily reviews per se, because I don't have the kind of time to really take a deep dive into stuff, but I do want to kind of get a better impression, better feel for some of the conversions that are out there. Because people ask all the time, oh, which fantasy role-playing game should I get for Foundry? And I know Pathfinder, the port over is excellent, but there are other fantasy role-playing games out there. DB's with us in chat. Welcome aboard. Steven from Roll for Combat says, I'm a Foundry pro. Reach out to me. Speaking of Steven, he was the next person that we did an interview with. So popped on over to his booth and we chatted a bit about some of the, like the new release, the Leshy Dragons Battle Zoo Bestiary that was released at Gen Con, some of the other new stuff. But the big news from Steven is Deathbringer. So Professor DM had created a role-playing game. I guess it was finished. And then I guess he encountered Shadow Dark and thought, hey, you know what? These mechanics fit a little bit better. So Stephen Glicker, Dan, I don't know Dan's last name off the top of my head, and Kelsey Dion are teaming up to bring you Deathbringer. So it is, yeah, Agile Monk says, you need a little more metal. So DB says, I need a Foundry Pro. I'm a Foundry schmuck. I'm a novice, I guess I will say. Chris Langren asks, did I meet Professor DM? I have encountered him once before. I did not run into him this year. So, yeah, I know of him. I don't know him. So you got to remember, I don't know a lot of the content creators and stuff out there. So I just, yeah, I don't kind of run in the same circles for the most part. I'm not saying anything good or bad. I'm just saying I just don't encounter them. Like Steven is a content creator as well. I mean, up until the interview this year, I mean, I just bump into him once in a while at like Gen Con. So anyway, so Steven loaded me down with some Battle Zoo goodies. So we've got those aforementioned Leshy Dragons. We have Misfit Dragons. We have Fairy Dragons. And then you might recall, it wasn't that long ago, I did a review for Jewel of the Indigo Isles, and I did not have the World Book. Here's the Gazetteer. So you will see this content heading your way. I got all 5 ebooks just because in the past I had shared Pathfinder books. And I'll tell you right now, in the time that I spent over by the Roll for Combat exhibit area, and I popped by there 3 times, they were selling the hell out of their Pathfinder goodies. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. Next up, I went and chatted with Benji Corliss over at Rebellion Unplugged. I go back a bit with Benji. He was with another publisher in the past. I'll just say it. He was with Osprey Press. And he was my contact to send review copies and stuff. He was their marketing guy. And he left there and he went over to Rebellion. And I went over there, talked about the Joyride series of games. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to see some of the titles in the series. It's kind of, I guess it's a cross between, I'm trying to remember, he said Mad Max and something else. I thought it looked like it would appeal to people who enjoy, you know, old car wars, although it doesn't look like there's vehicular weapons, but there is a demolition derby aspect to it. There's a racing aspect to it. Looks pretty cool. It has a pretty nice sort of like table presence from what I could see. But the biggest deal, we talked about this to some extent over at Rebellion Unplugged, is they are now the owners of Tunnels and Trolls, the venerable role-playing game from Ken St. Andre, which was available by way of Flying Buffalo Games for decades. Well, of course, Rick Loomis passed and Flying Buffalo Games fell apart. It passed from like one ownership to, I think it was a holding company, and now it is with Rebellion, and they are working on Tunnels and Trolls, A New Age. This is the alpha rules here. This is not a quick start. These are just alpha rules. And Benji and I talked about it, for a little bit. And a few things that I thought were very, very important was that it was still going to have the same kind of feel as original or even the last edition of Tunnels and Trolls. And they are looking very much to continue the tradition of solitaire play, which is something Tunnels and Trolls is famed for. Now, I'm not positive if I understood this correctly. Some of you have already watched my interview with Benji Corliss, but it sounded to me that they were going to be reprinting old Tunnels and Trolls stuff. Kind of sounded like that's what was going to happen, because they are the stewards of Tunnels and Trolls now, and they're not just going to toss everything that's come before. So I kind of have the feeling that they're looking to actually bring some of the old like solitaire adventures and things like that back. So we'll see. Did I say hello to Mark Hunt? I may have. If I didn't, I apologize. So Agile Monk says Ken St. Andre is going through some major health and recovery issues. That's too bad. You may recall years ago, if you've been hanging with the gang that long, I reviewed the last edition of Tunnels and Trolls. And I got to say, I'll say it again. For a game that came out in the late 1970s, in fact, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but it was Rick Loomis who coined the term role-playing game, because that's how they presented Tunnels and Trolls, as a role-playing game. That phrase didn't originate with TSR or Dungeons and Dragons. I always thought that was kind of interesting. So, its mechanics are still pretty modern in a lot of ways, and very different, very unique. You're only using 6-sided dice, and then you have big pools of dice. I think where it kind of starts to weaken is when you get into higher level play, when you're looking at throwing, huge handfuls of 6-sided dice, like 50 or more. And then there are like some optional rules. Well, if you don't want to roll that many dice, just roll 5, multiply by 10. Yeah, but the realization there is that's not 50 dice. You're going to get a way bigger swing there instead of if you rolled all 50 dice. But I get it. I get it. Chris Lundgren says they own Tunnels and Trolls, but never a fan of solo play. Wish they made past adventures for more than one player. They did. Not every adventure that came from Flying Buffalo Games was solitaire. So Agile Monk says it was 1975 when Tunnels and Trolls first came out. It is the second modern role-playing game ever published. I know there's some debate on that, but I know it was the second fantasy role-playing game that was published. So we've got that. So I think that's pretty cool. So what I'm thinking of doing is we may actually take an episode of the show and dive on into this. And because this is free, I don't have to worry about, I showed too many pages. Maybe we'll dive on into this and take a peek, because I am very, very curious about Tunnels and Trolls. And then I went and I did an interview with Evelyn Faubert from Mighty Boards. That was the last thing I did on Friday. And sadly enough, they were in an exhibit area that was just like really tiny. And they had a lot of merchandise. There were like 4 people behind the tables there. And it was like, it was like 10 by 10, which I'll be the first one to tell you, as far as the exhibit areas, I don't, Jen kind of was saying it was 10 by 10, but I had a couple of people actually tell me they had measured the space out and it was not 10 by 10, that they were getting sheeted about 6 inches on each side. So I was like, wow, that sucks. So I did a recorded interview with Evelyn, and I know some people have listened to it already and said it sounds like there's like a party going on next to me at some points in the audio. And it's like, yeah, well, not much I can do about that. Kind of stuck with that. So had a really fun interview. We talked about the new game. I believe it was a Gen Con release, Rebirth from Rainer Knizia. Also talked about Art Society, which has been out for a while. It's an award-winning game. It's got like a new deluxe edition that is on the horizon. And we also talked about Fate Forge Chronicles of Khan. But it's K-A-A-N, not K-H-A-N. So I got a copy of Rebirth, which I actually took the shrink wrap off because Elliott and I were going to check this out one night at the hotel. And then we were like, looks a little more complex than we want to deal with right now. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's go. Yeah, we did play some games. Chris Lundgren's asking. I'll talk about that in just a few moments. And then I also got, this box is really heavy, the aforementioned Fate Forge Chronicles of Khan. Chris Lundgren's like, board games, yay. I got a couple more board games I'll show you that we've got. All right, so that wrapped up Friday. So Elliott will attest, Voice of E will attest to this. Every day at Gen Con, there was just something, sometimes more than one thing, that just went wrong. And it had nothing to do with the convention, it had nothing to do with the people at the con or the people we were talking to or anything like that. It was just irritations that happened. So, first off, Thursday, Elliott misses the whole fucking day, really, at Gen Con. So, because we don't normally end up getting like event tickets, because we just never know, because most of the day we spend doing interviews and just looking around at the exhibit hall. So the early part of the day, we normally don't schedule, we wouldn't schedule to play something anyway. And then once we go back to the hotel, drop our stuff off, sometimes like this year we had to make multiple stops back and forth, especially since I had so many role-playing game books and those things are heavy, So as Elliott points out, it's like jabs. It was just little jabs. It was like, Right. Of course, the Thursday, that was a pretty big jab. So anyway, so Friday, I said to Elliott, I said, hey, come on, let's stop by the auction because you can check to see how things are going with what you entered, what's sold. There have been years where I've cashed out like on a Saturday because everything's sold, everything's gone. There's nothing for me to wait around for. So anyway, so I go, and as I mentioned, I had brought 40 items, and I did not bring items that were, $15 items. I mean, I brought a lot of stuff that sells for $100 or more. So anyway, I go and I log in and I take a look, and it shows it looked as if a lot of the stuff had gone through the auction. I had sold 10 items, and the total was $322. Which was about 20% of what I had kind of figured if I had just gotten the minimum reserve amount on these items. So anyway, Elliott and I go over to the store. This is where Elliott just mentioned Big Top, because Elliott says, hey, let's take a look, see if we can find anything, maybe pick something up, go back to the hotel and play. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm sitting thinking there, oh man, not looking good. Not looking good. Not looking good for the auction here. Because you figure that's Friday, all that's left is Saturday, and then you go on Sunday to if you've still got stuff, to go pick it up and cash out. So anyway, we're walking through the store, and I'm seeing some of my items in the store, and I'm like, great. So, problem is, they moved the auction from the convention center right across the street from one of the major entrances into the exhibit hall to the Marriott across the street, and an area of the Marriott that even if you're staying at the Marriott, you are never going to walk past this area. Only way you're going to pass by this area is if you're taking the skywalk to another hotel. So in past years, the reason why the story that was given, why they moved the auction to the Marriott, was because the store, the consignment store, where you could just bring stuff and put it directly into the store, or if it didn't sell at auction, it goes to the store, which is what I do. The line was too big. It was causing too much of a problem with people trying to walk past. So what do? They move it over to the Marriott, and they replace it with the Lorcana game room for Ravensburger with far bigger lines. So it's like, okay, so we know the story about why they moved it was bullshit. So anyway, more on the auction in a few moments. So yes, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And it was funny because I had even mentioned to Elliott before that, wouldn't be surprised if this year's auction wasn't good. Because, people are concerned about the economy and their money and stuff like that. And I completely understand. So, plus, when I walked past during the War Games session, when Elliott was stuck having to work, it was maybe a quarter full. And I was like, ooh. And I had mentioned it to Elliott when I got back. And we never saw a line for anybody to get into the store. You just strolled right on into the store. So anyway, so Elliott picked up Big Top, a game from All Play, and a Lord of the Rings game, if I remember correctly. Chris Lindgren says a buddy of theirs was at Gen Con, saw the first Starfleet battles being played with miniatures, and the box set of the Captain's Edition being sold at a booth. Yes, that would be Amarillo Game Designs. So Chris says they heard Historical Miniatures had a good presence at the convention. Maybe in the gaming area, not in the exhibit hall. I didn't see much. Actually, funny enough, I did not see much by way of miniatures. So I did not see any Privateer Press, which makes sense because I thought they've sold off most of their stuff to Steamforged Games. But no cool mini or not, because I don't think they wanted to show their faces for one. But anyway, so Elliott picked up Big Top, which was kind of a circus game. And then we played that and went through the rules and stuff. We played it and it was kind of like, wait a second, something's wrong here. Because you're supposed to be like hiring acts and stuff like that. And it seemed interesting. It was intriguing, but it was like, we're hardly through this game and both of us are broke. And it's like, there really isn't ways to get money. So I was like, okay, let's try this again. Let's start this again. And we did, same thing. And Elliott's online, he's looking like on Board Game Geek, and there's all these people asking questions and stuff like that. So we thought we had it figured out according to what was said online. And we played it, and sure enough, the same damn thing. And we both agreed. It's like, this is a broken game. And I guess the designer was on Board Game Geek. I guess they weren't they weren't too kind to people who were saying, there's something wrong with these rules. Elliott says they'd love to play Starfleet Battles again. Yeah, we got on board Starfleet Battles when it first came out. When it came out from Task Force Games, and it was in one of the Ziploc bags. And pretty cool. Agile Monk says they played so much Starfleet Battles, used to have this old Starfleet Battle miniatures. Yes, it is Amarillo Design Bureau, who is the current owners. All right, so that was Friday. Saturday rolls around, and we're walking along, and we see Andrew Bellery from Exalted Funeral. And as I already pointed out, he looks a lot like a young edition of a friend we had in high school, who we're still friends with. And the sun was hitting him in a certain way, and I was like, oh my God. And I even said to Elliott, I'm like, is that Daryl? And they're looking at me, and they're like, hey, and I was like, hey, what are you doing here? Well, it turned out it was Andrew from Exalted Funeral again. And I was like, oh, shit. I was able to kind of roll with it so I didn't look like a complete idiot. But I was like, what a dummy. Because our friend Daryl is a world traveler and he is a gamer. So it would not have shocked me if we had run into him at Gen Con. So, but that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. So, another thing we did Friday night, it was Luke Stratton's, I think his birthday was yesterday, but they were celebrating Luke Stratton's birthday. Luke Stratton of Pirate Borg fame. So he went over to the JW Marriott and wished him a happy birthday. Oh, no, I'm taking that back. It was the Marriott to wish him a happy birthday. Hung out a little bit, ran into some of the folks from the Philadelphia area game expo. So chatted with them a little bit. And then we went back to the hotel and played some of that broken Big Top. So Saturday rolls around. First off, we've got Monte Cook Games. And that was a really fun interview. In fact, had a lot of fun interviews. It was with Kate Evans and Olivia Ryan. So it was the three of us. We talked all things Monte Cook Games. We talked a little bit about the upcoming Kickstarter. I think it's a Kickstarter. I don't think they're going to go on GameFound or Backer Kit for the new edition of Cypher System. They're just going to call it Cypher. So Roll for Combat, Steven says they were at that party. It was very hot. Yeah, we kind of rocked out of there before the Ennies crowd came in. So yeah, there you go. Agile Monk, broken Big Top. Yes, That's what it was. It was one of those big top fires that burnt the whole thing to the ground. That was kind of it. Anyway, Agile Monk said, loved watching Stephen on panels. Did great with Dan, Mark, and Kelsey, etc. Cool. So anyway, really good interview. Had a lot of fun. They, you know, if you watch my interviews, you know, I kind of joke around a little bit and things like that. And they were very responsive to that and got loaded down with Monte Cook game stuff. So you've already seen, we had 3 Monte Cook game releases come my way. Darkest House, High Noon at Midnight, and what is the third one? I think it was the last one we just took a look at. I think it's another, Magnus Archives. So I was going to say, because they all were kind of horror, right? So right before I left, I got the Cypher System rule book in because it had been out of print. So this was not something that I got at Gen Con, but this arrived. I am planning on taking a look at this probably second out of the stuff that I got. But I think we'll start off with a peek at the starter set. Take a look at the starter set. Got this. So Agile Monk says they were bummed some of the Gen Con videos didn't get video, only audio. So the first with Green Ronin, that was the only one that we only did audio because Elliott was stuck. Elliott wasn't in the convention center. He was working. He couldn't get over there. The other 2 were because their exhibit areas were too small, and we're not allowed to put a camera, tripod, monopod, anything outside of the area that they are renting. There's a reason why the carpets are 2 different colors. So we are not allowed to shoot from that spot unless we have approval from Gen Con and things like that. So that's why those were audio, because both of them were just 10 by 10. They were all squeezed in. In fact, one of them, the MythWorks interview, which we'll talk about in just a minute, that was one of the people who had told me that they had actually measured out their area that had been marked off for them, and that it was not 10 by 10, that it was off 6 inches on every side. So yes. Agile Monk says, yes, I heard you can't put cameras outside of the working paid space as the unions will break legs. You know, I have heard stories a long, long time ago of people being asked to leave for shooting video and setting up a camera where they weren't supposed to. So that I don't feel like dealing with. Sorry. Also want to point out, those of you mentioning Elliott, Elliott spells his name with 2 T's, unlike Elliott Ness, that bum. So, anyway, back to the stuff that the fine folks over at Monte Cook Games were kind enough to provide me. I also got Old Gods of Appalachia. So more horror, as well as I believe this is an adventure book, Dig Your Own Grave, for Old Gods of Appalachia, and the new cyberpunk setting book. They call them genre books, which I had a news piece about, Neon Rain. So we're going to be diving on into this. And then there is also a zine for Neon Rain. It is Cash and Chrome. So loads of stuff from Monte Cook Games. So pretty cool. Now, I had mentioned, starting off with the interview with Cobalt Press on Friday. Tomorrow's show, we're going to take a first look at the World Book for Labyrinth. So I've got the World Book. I also had the Adventure Book. So we're going to take a look at the World Book tomorrow's show. And then next week, we're going to dive on into the adventure book. So next up, we went and talked with Rick Meintz of Chaosium Inc. It was time for my annual interview with Rick. And of course, Chaosium Inc. is celebrating their 50th anniversary. So that was pretty cool. We talked a little bit about that. And then it is not going to be out in stores until September, but it was available at the convention. I did get a copy of it. It is the conclusion of the Sutra of Pale Leaves campaign for Call of Cthulhu, and it is Carcosa Manifest. So I am looking forward to checking this out. Something else that I received over at the Chaosium Inc. area, and this was more kind of as a thank you for my coverage. It is the Magnus Opus edition of Pendragon. So I thought that was very nice. This is a limited edition here. So that was pretty cool. So very happy to see that. Of course, we talked a little bit about what's cooking for Chaosium Inc. So another good interview. And yeah, it's kind of funny. You know, you get to the point where you've interviewed people so many times, you just you kind of joke around with them and stuff like that. Klantos is with us in chat. Welcome aboard. So next up, this was another audio interview, and it was with MythWorks. I spoke with Rick Heisey, and we talked about Slug Blaster, the Wild Sea, PNK plus CBR, which I've been calling Cyber plus Punk, as well as the Last Caravan, because those are the 4 RPGs that they've got available. And so we talked about that, delved into a little bit of the Wild Sea, talked a little bit more about the Last Caravan and CBR plus PNK. Slug Blaster, I know it's won awards and things like that, but it's one of those kind of games that really doesn't jump out at me. To me, it seems it's more like an art punk sort of game than anything else. But I did get review copies of The Wild Sea, CBR plus PNK, which I believe this is all like pamphlets, little foldouts. I think everything is like a foldout. And I also got The Last Caravan. Chris Lundgren asked if I saw the new Planet of the Apes role-playing game. I did not. I did not see Magnetic Press Play, I want to say, is it's not Magnetic Play. Yeah, it's Magnetic Press Play. No, I did not see them. So I got to say, there were some portions of the exhibit hall that we probably didn't get as close a look at as we would have liked to. But I don't recall seeing it. Now, remember, I was talking about the exhibit areas, and supposedly they had over 570 exhibitors. It seemed as if they were not allowing exhibitors, publishers, to have as big an area as they had in prior years. So there were quite a few companies of pretty good size that their areas had kind of shrunk down. Paizo Inc., as an example, they didn't have as much space as they usually do. Now, it wasn't as noticeable as some other companies that I ran across, such as like Cubicle 7 Games. But yeah, it seemed like the exhibit areas were smaller for the publishers to squeeze more publishers in. It felt like the aisles weren't as wide as they had been. Now, I know the year after COVID, the aisles were really wide, so I wasn't expecting that anymore. But it seemed like a tighter squeeze. I don't know what Stephen from Roll for Combat thinks, but it did feel a little more compact, a little more squeezed in my opinion, at least. And I think Elliott agrees with me on that as well. Tessie Trekkie says, CBR plus PNK is an absolutely beautiful piece of game and physical design. And yes, it's all pamphlets. Plantos is asking, could I do a review on Old Gods of Appalachia? You know, I don't know. If I had a copy of it, maybe I would. Yeah, that's a game plan. See, now keep in mind, I don't go and I don't approach publishers and try to get like as much as I can to review. And I mean, there are people out there who, you know, they just walk up and they're like, yeah. That's not my style. So, I mean, there were publishers I talked to and they were like, oh, let me give you a copy of XYZ. Like as an example, when I was over at Mighty Boards, it was like, okay, I'll also give you a copy of Art Society, which looks like an interesting game. I just don't think it would get much bang for the buck as far as me providing a review. Number one, the game's been out for quite a while, a couple of years at least. Everybody's reviewed it, and it's probably not exactly something that's, you know, exactly my audience, right? So myself personally, I'd rather let a publisher sell something that they would give me to review if I don't think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to want to check out here at the Gaming Gang. Steven from Roll for Combat says, it seemed a bit more compact. And yes, their booth was 10 by 10 as he measured it, but he had a 10 by 20, which was split in half. As Elliott's pointing out, there were 30 aisles for the first time. Yeah, we were talking about that. We thought that it had only gone like 28 or 29, that we didn't remember there being, well, 2,900, I should say. We didn't remember there being an aisle 3,000 in the past. Maybe there was. I don't know. Clanto says, that's why I like when my reviews, they're honest. I try. Nobody pays me to do reviews. So, and I would not accept their money unless it was like, oh, hey, would you do a preview of our Kickstarter? Then I charge them money, but then it's not a review. So Kevin R. Smith says it's pretty hard to get through the crowds 2 years ago. Yeah. Chris Lundgren asked, did Catalyst Games Lab have an area this year? Yes, they did. You can actually ask Elliott about that because he bought something from Catalyst Game Labs. So Joe Monk says, yeah, that's why I buy games Jeff reviews. Yeah, sadly, I don't get, any percentile on that. So anyway, so Rick Heisey, he was very nice. Enjoyed that interview. From there, I moved on and I did a double dip of Cubicle 7 games as I spoke with Dominic McDowell, and Dom and I talked more about what's on the horizon, kind of big picture stuff with Cubicle 7 games. I only had a few minutes with him because he had a bunch of stuff going on. And thankfully, he took some time to actually sit down and chat with me. I didn't talk with him last year because nobody from Ireland came over for Gen Con. It was all US folks, and they had actually hired a company to set up their booth in that, which I guess was a complete disaster. But got to talk with Dom and then followed that up with my friend T.S. Luckhart, who pops into chat every once in a while. And it's Vowlus. I think it's a Warhammer 40K character. And during the interview, I said, yeah. TS pops into chat every once in a while. And I'm always like, oh, yeah, it's first time visit by whatever. And he's always like, no, it's TS. I'm like, oh, yeah, because I always forget the nickname that he's got. There you go. So Elliott's pointing out They met Quincy from Quincy's Tavern at the Catalyst booth. He says, what a nice guy he was. So yes, he was launching a game. I think it was a Gen Con launch, and Elliott's wife and his sister-in-law each wanted copies. Chris Leinhorn asks, is the Castles and Crusades starter set out at the con? Do not know. I did not stop by Troll Lord Games. I did see Steven Chenault. He was walking. He was on the phone. He spotted me. He shook my hand, kept going. So, and I just said, hey, Steven, as he shook my hand, and that was it. So I did not stop by the booth because I never saw Steven there, and I never saw Chuck there. So it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to stop and talk to anybody else. I don't have anything from Cubicle 7 Games because I am pretty much up to date with everything as far as reviews and that. So there wasn't anything that I was aware of that was at the show from C7 that I needed. So from there, we moved on to talk with Thomas Harenstam from Free League Publishing. Yes. Talked a little bit about the One Ring as well as the Lord of the Rings role-playing starter sets, as well as Alien, the new edition of Alien, which is on the horizon. We talked about the Coriolis, the Great Dark, which I actually shared a first look video of before I left. That was the last video that was on the channel before the interviews started popping. And then we talked a little bit about what's going on for the future. DB said, and you got to say Morkborg. Yes, I got to say Mirkberg. Agile Monk says, we have to fix this Troll Lord Games issue. I don't know. I mean, maybe they don't want to. I have no idea. So, it is what it is. It's in their ballpark, right? So, it's in their court, I guess I'll say. Anyway, so we talked about that. We talked a little bit about Twilight Sword, which is, I guess it was announced a few days ago. I'll probably have a news piece about it tomorrow. And it is a new anime-inspired fantasy role-playing game from Free League Games and Two Little Mouse. Mice, I should say. Two Little Mouse. What the hell's going on here, Jeff? You're losing your mind. So I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. We talked a little bit about Outgunned and Outgunned Adventure because I said, Two Little Mice, their books are gorgeous. And their games are really well designed. So I did talk to Tomas about some other stuff regarding Two Little Mice, but it was off the record. I cannot share it with you. Sorry. Oh, hey, I should point out, Steven from Roll for Combat told me that Paizo Inc. was pissed at me because of the embargo. And because I had violated the embargo on the Starfinder 2nd edition player's guide. And as I mentioned to Steven, and in the email that I sent to my marketing contact from Paizo Inc., I cannot abide by an embargo if you don't tell me about it. So I don't know if they're going to come back by saying, well, didn't you see the PDF said the PDF wouldn't be available until July 31st? Yes, I saw that. I saw they had a placeholder instead of the PDF like we normally get. But the thing is, I thought they were just doing that to try to tamp down the pirates. Because, and I'm sure Paizo Inc. is very aware of this, on release day, their PDFs are out there in the wild with folks who are flying the Jolly Roger, if you know what I mean. So I thought that's why they weren't sharing the PDF. Not that there was an embargo. So Anyway, Steven mentioned that he stuck up for me. So I thought that was cool. So anyway, yeah, so I guess Paizo Inc. was mad. It's like, okay, whatever. Chris Leonard asks, was Ares Games finally there this year? Heard they were coming back. Is that true? They were there. Their exhibit area was tiny, really, really small, and nothing like it had been in the past. Usually it's Origins Game Fair that they've got the biggest area. But like I said, once again, all of these publishers that normally had far larger exhibit areas were, cut down. And I don't think it was because they said, hey, yeah, we want a smaller space. It was because Gen Con probably said, hey, if you don't have X number of points with us, we're only going to sell you, we're only going to rent you such a big space. Don't know. Do not know. Anyway, getting back to Free League Games, I do not have the starter sets for The One Ring or Lord of the Rings role-playing. Those review copies are supposed to be being sent out or in transit. I guess there was a little bit of a hiccup, especially with the One Ring starter set. They didn't even have it until the second day of Gen Con, and then it sold out. But I did get Outgunned Adventure. Yay! I've been looking forward to checking this out. So I got this. And I also got Black Powder and Brimstone. So stay tuned. We are going to have reviews of these. So final interview I did with Jess Carrier from Thunderworks Games. Now, I had spoken with her at Gamehole Con, and she had given me copies of, well, she had already sent a copy of Role Player, but she gave me copies of Cartographers and Stone Spine Architects. And I started off the interview by saying how much Elliott and I and the rest of the gang has really enjoyed the Thunderworks games that we had an opportunity to play. So they had 2 new releases there. I shared a news piece about the first one, and that is Flip Tunes. And Elliott and I played this 4 or 5 times. And the first time we played it, and I'm going to do a review. I'm probably going to shoot the review this weekend because we have played it enough times to review it. And I actually have a little mini expansion that came in the bag that I did not realize I had. But first time we played it, we were sort of like, So Chris is rocking on out with Buddy the Cockatiel. Good to see you, Chris. Catch you next time. So anyway, after we played it the first time, we were kind of like, there's something there. There's something interesting there. Maybe we're not playing it right. And it turned out, yes, one of the rules we were not doing correctly. Sarah D's hitting the good night button too. Thank you, Sarah. Hope to see you tomorrow. And then after the second time we played it, we realized there was something else that we kind of missed. And then after that, we played it a couple of times and it was like, this is a cool game. This is a really interesting game because there are some strategies to it that you wouldn't actually think. Because for one, what you're doing is you're building a deck. You shuffle that deck every round, and then you just deal out 6 cards to a grid. Now, there's different things that happen where you can have extra cards and other stuff, but that's essentially the concept to it, is you're building a deck. You're trying to have as much fame as possible with the cards that come out of your deck, because then you use the fame to recruit more actors to your deck. And then you also use it to get rid of actors who are just not cutting it anymore. So really interesting. Elliott can maybe attest to that in chat too. So I thought this was very cool. I also got Citizens of the Spark, which I had shared some news about not too long ago. So that was pretty cool. This looks pretty interesting. So I will do an unboxing of this. And I got to say, the interview with Jess from Thunderworks Games was a lot of fun. She's really fun person to talk to. Just really down to earth, kidding around. And she had some very nice things to say about the gaming gang. So that was something else that was really cool. There were a lot of people who were talking about how much they appreciate the sort of coverage that I provide that is different than many other folks out there. So I was like, cool. Yeah, warmed the cockles of my heart. Did see a few people who came by and introduced themselves and said, you know, they enjoy the gaming gang. Usually it was when Elliott wasn't around, because that's kind of how it goes. If we're at a convention and Elliott goes to the bathroom, somebody's going to come up and talk to me, and then they'll walk away before Elliott gets there. I actually, one time I had taken pictures with the people because I wanted proof. Because Elliott, yeah, sure. Yeah, we love your stuff, Jeff. So yes, Elliott says the Thunderworks Games interview was a lot of fun. And then I am planning on heading up to Gamehole Con in October. So probably chat with Jess Carrier once again, because I know that's right in their backyard. So they're going to be exhibiting there. Should also point out, I also had an opportunity to finally meet Kelsey Dion of Shadow Dark fame. Chatted with her for a few minutes, and super cool, super nice. We're going to look to possibly do an interview. I am looking to try to bring you guys more interviews. Not a ton, but I do want to get some more interviews out there outside of convention time to just chat with folks. So hopefully we'll be putting that together. So you might recall, I had mentioned that every day there was just, as Elliott pointed out, the jabs. Just another jab. In fact, I'm going to grab a little bit of soda here. So once again, on Saturday, exhibit hall, everything's great. No problem. Fun interviews. Elliott was pleased. I had a recorded interview because, you know, he's got to do the camera work. So if it's like, oh, no, it's too small to do a video here. All righty. See, and the funny thing is, normally I'd have just told people, hey, you know what? There's not enough space for us to shoot an interview. Why don't you just give me some elevator pitches? This year I was like, well, you know what? Let's just record it. And I just did it with my phone, and gotta be honest, the audio is pretty good. Of course, Elliott's like, yeah, what fans? Figments of my imagination. So we're done. We're done with our interviews. We're going to head back to the hotel. And I had gotten a text from Andrew at Exalted Funeral saying, hey, we got a party tonight, 6:30. It's at this place. You know, you're invited. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So Elliott and I were talking, and Elliott was like, yeah, he didn't want to go. I mean, because we're pretty beat. A lot of walking. And it was weird because it wasn't like really hot in Indianapolis for like 2 of the days. 2 of the days it was kind of cool, but the humidity was insane. So it was like 75 degrees and like 80% humidity. So even though it was cool out, you were still all just like bathed in sweat. It was weird. So anyway, so I said, yeah, okay, let's stop by the auction so I can take a peek. And I knew that you had to get over to the auction prior to the charity auction that wraps up the auction every year, because they put the laptop away that you log into to check your sales and stuff. So we knew we had to get over there before the charity auction started. So we get over there, we walk in, and there's no laptop. So I asked, where's the laptop to check your sales numbers? They're like, oh, we put it away because, the charity auction's about to start. I said, yeah, in a half hour. So, of course, now it's Saturday. I have absolutely no clue what may have sold, what may not have sold. What are we looking at? I'm like, whatever. I told Elliott, I said, yeah, it's not even worth getting bothered over anymore because it just looks like this is going to be disaster, whatever. So we go back to our hotel, and I said to Elliott, I said, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to go over to that Exalted Funeral party. I'm just going to order hot box pizza because it's kind of a tradition every year having hot box pizza. I was going to have it ordered to be, delivered. Elliott was going to have some Chinese food delivered, and we were just going to hang out. We were going to play games. So I go online to order the pizza, and it says it's going to be delivered in 2 hours, 15 minutes to 2 hours, 25 minutes. And I'm like, of course it is. Jab. It's like, of course it is. Jab. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going to order the pizza. And I said to Elliott, you know what? I'm just going to walk over to the party. I'm going to hang out for a little bit, and then I will be back before the pizza arrives. He's like, yeah, okay, cool. And I said, and then we'll play some games because I figure I'm going to be back there before like 8:30. So I walk, and the place it was at was all the way on the exact opposite side of the convention center from us. So it took about 25 minutes to walk over there. And once again, now it was a little bit warmer and it was still humid. So I'm like, ugh. So I'm walking along. I get there. I walk in. I find out where everybody's sitting. I walk up. I say hello to Andrew. I meet the guys from Crowbar Creative who won Ennies for the Monty Python role-playing game. I met the owner of Exalted Funeral, and he was wearing all the Ennies they won that night because they cleaned up at the Ennies. And Andrew says, hey, I got a pitcher of beer. You want me to pour you one? I said, yeah, great. He's pouring me the beer, and the phone rings in my pocket. And I'm like, don't tell me that's Elliott. And I look, and it's Elliott. And I answer it. He goes, your pizza's here. Of course it is. Jab. So I chatted with, some of the folks for about 5 minutes. I drank the beer. I said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I was planning on hanging out for a bit, but the pizza was supposed to be delivered in like 2.5 hours. Got delivered in like a half hour. So I'm like, I'm heading back. So of course I got to trudge my way back over to the hotel. Because for one, I was like, oh, at least I can get off my feet for a little bit. It's like, damn it. Russell Higgins says, can't win, don't play. So anyway, so Sunday rolls around. We have to go pick up the stuff from the auction, find out what's the final total. It was not a disaster, but it was the worst auction I ever had. It came out to, I had 11 items that didn't sell. They were all big ticket items. And one of them they couldn't even find to give back to me. And I was like, guy's like, oh, I'll look around a little more. I'm like, nah, don't bother. It's like Elliott and I we wanted to drop the cart back off with the games at our car. So we were going to go pop into the exhibit hall for like another hour before we left. And it all ended up, because I had calculated if I sold everything at the minimum reserve price minus the insertion fees, which they jacked up their insertion fee this year, and their cut because it goes to charity. I ended up at 60% of that. So not a great auction. Like I said, it was financially, it was the worst auction ever. And if you tuned in a little bit late, I had already mentioned they moved the auction from what was a fantastic location. And the auction was always packed with people because it was right across from one of the main entrances into the exhibit hall. So if you were going to Gen Con for the first time and you'd be walking by, you'd be like, hey, what's going on in there? And you take a look and, oh, hey, it's an auction. And then you'd look, they list, because they have different times for different kinds of games. So you'd always have the auction packed. Yeah, granted, sometimes it'd be somebody, a few people sitting in there just kind of taking a load off for a little bit, but still. And then there were, always a line to get into the store. Moved it across the street. Never a line into the store. Never had to wait to get into the store. The auction area was never completely full. And like I said, when I walked by, when they were doing their first war game session, which is when my GMT stuff went up there, maybe quarter of the auction was full. So, yep. So like I said, it was the weirdest Gen Con I had ever gone to. As Elliott will attest, never had a Gen Con where just every day it was something weird happening that just was irritating. But once again, nothing to do with the convention itself, nothing to do with the people we were dealing with at the convention. It was just odd shit outside our hand, outside of our control that was going on. Tessie Trekkie says, at that point, I would have written off the pizza no matter the cost. Okay, but you got to keep in mind, at that point in time, I had seen that my auction proceeds were $322. So I was like, well, I'm not throwing away $26 in pizza. And of course, by the time I got back to the hotel, it was cold, but I still ate it because I hadn't eaten all day. But yeah, Elliott and I still had a really good time. All I'm saying, it was weird. It was just a weird Gen Con. So, but no doubt be there again next year. I may not go through the hassle of the auction, though. That I might consider taking a pass on. So, anyway. All right. So, real quickly, anybody have any last question about the con or anything like that? Oh, I see. Semper Buffo asked, did I see Modiphius? I did not. I did not see Modiphius. I did not stop and talk to anybody from Modiphius. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. There was one section, I mentioned this earlier, there was a section of the exhibit hall that I know we walked through, but it was not easy to maybe tell what some of these exhibitors were. Now, there was a point where, like I said, the aisles seemed like they were much shorter, not shorter, but much narrower. And there were times where it was like people were just all packed up. And I was like, come on, move it along, folks. DB says, I missed a bit of the stream. Did you mention what games you played? We didn't play a ton of games. We played Big Top. We played Flip Tunes. And that was kind of it as far as what we played. Because as I mentioned before, when we go to, especially if we go to Gen Con, we don't schedule any like events, any games or anything like that during the time that the exhibit hall is open, because I'm there shooting videos and we're taking a look at what's going on in the exhibit hall. And then of course, we always have to head back to the hotel. Sometimes the hotel's close by, sometimes it's not all that close by. And a lot of times, we'll go out, we'll have something to eat, we'll have some adult beverages. And a lot of times by the time we finished up with that, we're looking at like 9, 10 o'clock. So by that point, you're not going to really have events that you're going to join in on that late. All liquored up, But yeah, for the most part, we really don't play. I mean, we'll play games that we like get copies of or that I bring with. So like last year we played like, I want to say we played Cartographers, we played Role Player, we played a couple other games because the hotel we were at was further away. So by the time we were done with the exhibit hall, it closes at 6. And then by the time we would get back to the hotel, it was around 7. Then, kind of freshen up a little bit, relax for a few minutes, go out and grab something to eat. So yeah, we don't tend to do a lot of events and stuff. A lot of times we'll play games that we've brought with, or maybe buy at like the auction store, or like I said, we played Flip Tunes, which I had received from Thunderworks Games. And I figured, I'm sure Jess won't care if I don't do an unboxing video. We'll just do a review. So, all right. Okay, everybody, that is it for this time out. Remember, on tomorrow's show, I am going to dive on in and we are going to take a first look at the Cobalt Press Labyrinth World Book. Yes, this is kind of the gazetteer of their multiverse. So we're going to be taking a peek at this. And then on Thursday, we're going to take a first look at the Sutra of Pale Leaves conclusion, Carcosa Manifest, for Call of Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. I know there's no embargo on this because they were selling this at Gen Con, so no worries about that. All right. Anyway, if you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, tip of the cap to you. It is much appreciated, because especially since a lot of times I'm just kind of talking, doing the news, doing a game unboxing, or flipping through a role-playing game book, just babbling away. Not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company. But of course, I know a lot of folks, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. It doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. I really do want to say thank you to the more than 16,000 subscribers that we have here on the Gaming Gang channel. It is much appreciated when you watch any of the over 2,300 videos that we have. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my recent first look at Coriolis, the Great Dark from Free League Publishing. All right, everybody, thank you very kindly for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.